Good morning everyone, my name is Ruth King and I'm the Events and Marketing Executive here at Hornbill. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar where we will be having a presentation on simplifying the challenges of modern ITSM with Abdi Hamisi, Sales Manager, and Steve Boardman, Project Manager here at Hornbill. Just to inform you, delegate audio will be muted during the presentation to help facilitate flow and timekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the GoToMeeting questions facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll collect questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you for taking the time to attend. I will now pass you over to Abdi and Steve.
Good morning and thanks Ruth for the introduction. My name's Abdi, I look after the commercial team here at Hornbill, and over the next hour or so myself and my colleague Steve are going to take you through a quick overview of our approach to simplifying the challenges of modern ITSM and take you through the new Hornbill Service Manager solution. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to spend a few minutes here, probably 8 or 10 minutes or so, just going through some positioning in terms of our understanding of the challenges around supporting your organisation in today's day and age, and then I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to take the majority of the time up to take you through the actual solution. As we've said, if you've got any questions, please feel free to post them and we'll be more than happy to address those either as they come up or at the end. So in terms of today's session, we're going to come at this from the perspective of Sonia and Graham, and just to introduce them in the context of their roles. Sonia is a service desk manager and Graham is the analyst or super admin, if you like, on any given service desk. And the reason we come at this from this perspective is these are typically the type of people that we engage with on a day-to-day basis. Obviously there's other roles and functions, but for the main part these are the kind of people that we engage with on a day-to-day basis in regards to our solutions and the challenges that you guys face out there in the market trying to support your organisation. So for today's demo we're going to have a look at the challenges faced by these two particular roles. Obviously happy to talk to you if you sit outside those roles and to look at some of the challenges, but I'm sure some of these will still resonate with you as well. So in terms of the key challenges, I mean, we've been in this sort of business for 20 years now as a company, and we've done thousands of meetings and hundreds of successful implementations, and we've got a fairly good understanding, we feel, of some of the key challenges, and those have evolved over time, but some of them still hold true. But in sort of summarising those challenges, we've kind of boiled them down to these 5 key areas. The first one being around upgrades, the second one obviously cost, in this day and age that's particularly relevant, complexity, usability and customization. So we're going to come at this from that perspective and look at how those 5 key areas affect Graham and Sonia in the context of their roles on a day-to-day basis. And as we look through those, we'll come back and have a look at how we address that with the new Hornbill Service Manager solution for you. So in terms of key challenges, let's take a look at Sonia's challenges initially, and we'll drill down on some of those for you. Upgrades can be expensive and time-consuming. I think can be replaced with are, and in general terms, I'm sure for the most part, all of you guys who have been using Supportworks over the years are probably going to recognise this as a particular challenge. The real essence being that any software that's installed on-premise, on your servers, in your environment has an element of complexity associated with managing, maintaining, patching, keeping it up and running. And when upgrades come round, typically they do involve some kind of project. They will involve an element of time, quite a lot of effort and potentially some cost. And you may seek help from us as a vendor to help you out with those upgrades. So, we recognise that as a challenge, and it's something that has to be considered when you're looking at your next, or going forwards, your next solution, or any potential move to upgrade Supportworks going forwards. Customizations, again, this kind of goes hand in hand with upgrades, but for the most part, our experience with Supportworks, and I'm sure you guys would probably correlate this, is that it is very flexible. You can customize it, and that's one of the attractions to buying Supportworks in the first place. But one of the things that comes out of those customizations is the fact that when you do come to do an upgrade, oftentimes there is a requirement to either re-implement or to leave those customizations behind depending on where they sit. So this is definitely a challenge that comes up regularly when we're speaking to our customers who use Supportworks. A good example, if you customize your forms, when it comes to an upgrade, that's something you need to reconsider going forwards. And anything that you can do to mitigate that challenge going forwards would be a big benefit to you and your organization. administrator resources required. There's no getting away from it. Supportworks is a very powerful tool, but as I said, there's no way of escaping the fact that you need some element of skills and expertise internally in order to maintain and manage that solution going forward. And that comes at a cost, and one of the biggest challenges that we see from our customer base is the effect of your product expert or what we call champion potentially moving on from the organisation, getting promoted, no longer being the person responsible for Supportworks. Often leaves a big gap which can take a long time to fill, and obviously requires going back to us as the vendor to get more training and perhaps even more consultancy to bring somebody up to speed on how to use the tool. So anything around simplifying that challenge of managing the solution is obviously going to be hugely beneficial going forward. In terms of reporting, again, Supportworks is powerful. You can get a lot of information out there, but it's not the easiest in all cases to get the information you're looking for out of there. Obviously, this is one of the main reasons why you have a service desk tool, is to be able to get that meaningful management reporting out so that you can inform your decision-making processes going forward. So again, simplifying that challenge of getting management reporting out is key. Last but not least, again, in today's day and age, we're all going to be very acutely aware of the pressures around budgets and cost and the fact that we need to do more with less. I don't think that's ever changed in my time here at Hornbill. I'm sure it won't going forwards, but the key thing here is that it's in sharp focus at the moment, and we need to be able to find solutions to those challenges around being able to do more with less, improve productivity, deliver better service, and to move to being more proactive. Okay. So in terms of Graham's challenges as the analyst, the person that's using this tool day to day or potentially administering the tool in the Supportworks context, what are the key things that we see there? We get this feedback all the time. Supportworks is really powerful, it does great stuff, however it's not particularly intuitive by today's standards. And what we mean by that is, in today's day and age, the world's moved on. We've had the social revolution, the mobile revolution, and we expect to do a lot of stuff on the go, on our phones, from a browser. And while Supportworks does offer you a lot of functionality, it doesn't offer you a lot in the area of mobile, and again, you're tied largely to a Windows client, albeit we have got a web client obviously available for Supportworks, but for the most part you're really tied back to going back to your PC to do your job of updating your tickets and managing your work. So this is some feedback that we've heard over the last few years from customers, and again, in particular the people that use the tool day to day on the front line. Used to be able to, I need to be able to work from anywhere, again kind of reiterating what I said a moment ago in terms of mobility. High degree of technical knowledge. Typically, Graham is the guy that has to have that knowledge, and it's not just simply knowledge around how to configure Supportworks or whatever the service desk solution may be. It's knowledge about the local infrastructure, data sources, all the integrations, keeping all that stuff aligned, and for want of a better word, negotiating with our support team when you're trying to issue a report of an issue to us, in terms of trying to find out whether that lies with your infrastructure, whether that lies with our software, and doing that what we call the support dance, if you like. So anything that simplifies that whole process of maintaining the system, managing the system, working with us as the vendor to report and identify issues is always going to be good going forward. Having to leave the solution to communicate with colleagues. This is a massive thing that we've seen, perhaps not necessarily customers reported it, but something that we've observed in the industry, and particularly with Supportworks and tools of its generation, is that for the most part the tools do the job of IT service management, but in order to communicate with your colleagues you have to step out of the tools, jump into email or other informal collaboration channels to actually get that knowledge, that expertise, exchange ideas and information with your colleagues. So one of the things that we've heard from our users is the idea of being able to more naturally communicate with each other within the tool that you use, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through today. The last one obviously is around time spent, and again associates itself back to that cost saving side of things. The more time you spend maintaining your system, the less time you're spending actually doing the job of supporting your business and delivering better value initiatives back. So again, the simplicity of managing the solution, the simplicity of administering the solution, taking away the overheads around upgrading, patching and all of that kind of stuff would be significantly beneficial. So having looked at those challenges, let's have a look at what our take on that is going forwards. Obviously For those of you who've used Supportworks, you're obviously aware of the tool. We've been around for 20 years, and what we have done over the past 5-6 years is look at how we address today's challenges, knowing what we know, having learned all the lessons that we've learned over the last 20 years, and we've tried to pull that together with all the sort of advancements in technology and changes in the way that we think and act these days outside of work potentially. And again, what I'm referring to there is perhaps the social side of things and the mobility side of things that have come along in the time since Supportworks was originally written. So what we've come up with is the concept of our collaborative service management solution, which is called Service Manager. And the basic principle behind this is it's a marriage of all of the good practice stuff that we expect in terms of ITSM and ITIL with a lot of the good stuff that we've come to know and expect outside of work in terms of the mobility, the collaborative side of being able to engage with colleagues and friends in the sort of social context. But if we can bring all of that technology together to give you innovative ways of doing your service management work, we feel that would be a real benefit. And to date, what we've seen from the customers that we've engaged with so far is that that's been a massive step forward for them. So in terms of what we're going to show you today is a tool that allows you to share knowledge and ideas much more readily, to collaborate with your colleagues in a more intuitive and natural fashion, something that we're much more akin to and familiar with outside of work in today's day and age. Boost your productivity through giving you simplified ways of doing the job, and allow you to work from anywhere, as we talked about a moment ago. So what does that reflect itself in the tool? It's based around a tool that's familiar in terms of its look and feel. It has and embraces all the social context that we have outside of work. It's built around pushing information to you and allowing you to be up to date with all the stuff that matters to you in real time, effectively. In terms of the solution, basically it's available across any device. So at any device, anywhere, anytime is really the sort of strap line there. So wherever you are, you're always connected and you can keep up to date with what's required. So that's really key. And Steve today will show you hopefully some of those concepts in the mobile device and such like today as well. Any language. One of the major limitations around Supportworks for us as an organisation is the limitations around language capability, and as an organisation, we've been very successful in the UK, but in order to grow out and expand our footprint globally, we needed to address that. And so in the new Service Manager application, we've spent a lot of time looking at the language capabilities, and again we'll show you hopefully some really dare I say it, cool stuff around language. Not only can we deliver the interface in any language, but there's some really smart technology in there to help you break down language barriers, which I won't steal any of Steve's thunder as we go forward. Okay, so what we're going to spend a couple of minutes just talking on here before I hand over to Steve is what does this service look like? Well, in essence, what we're doing here is providing you a service, not a piece of software. So it's very important to get that concept straight. So this is a cloud solution. It's entirely cloud-based. There isn't an option for an on-premise solution. So that's the first fact that we need to get out on the table. The other thing that's probably really key to get across here is that it's a true SaaS solution. So it's not a piece of on-premise software that's being hosted in the cloud and delivered to you in a sort of a SaaS model from a commercial perspective. This is a true SaaS solution. It's 100% cloud-based. It's connected to various services. Just to give you a couple of examples, we're connected directly to Google and the Android notification platform. We're connected directly to the Apple notification platform. And those aren't things you can easily replicate on site on an instance-by-instance basis. So it's a true cloud service. And one of the key, I guess, telling factors whether something's a true cloud service is whether you have to stop and do upgrades. And we've talked about the challenge around upgrades earlier on. So what you get with the Hornbill Service Manager solution is a platform that's delivered in the cloud that all you need to do is log in and use. We take care of everything else. There is no concept of upgrades, which means you're always up to date with the latest features. You never have to stop, plan, pay for, execute an upgrade. Upgrades are simply delivered to you seamlessly, automatically, with very little, if any, impact on you. In the most case, most of those upgrades happen in the background and you never knew they actually happened, apart from the fact that there's a notification to say there's some new features or functionality available to you. So that's a really key concept, and if you think about the time and effort involved in upgrading Supportworks, for example, this is a big plus going forwards. That means you're constantly improving in terms of the capability of the tool. What that also means in simple terms is that you're always up to date with the latest features, so the tool's always shining and new. You're not falling behind 12 months, 12 in between releases that we push out. And the reality is that we've seen over the years is that customers don't typically do an upgrade every year. They often fall behind. So the key benefit here is you're getting the full benefit of all of the development that we offer delivered to you without having to do anything effectively. No disruption, and most of all, we talked about customizations. Everything that you are able to customize on the platform, including form design, business process, reporting, all of that's guaranteed to work regardless of any of the updates that we push out automatically to you. So in stark contrast to what you're familiar with in Supportworks, what we've tried to do here is address those major challenges that we've seen and customers have experienced over the years with the Supportworks platform and tools of its generation, if you like. So the last but probably most important thing here is, as an existing customer, we're offering a free implementation or a free migration package. So as an existing customer, we offer a loyalty incentive, if you like, whereby we'll actually work with you to move you across from Supportworks to Hornbill at no cost to you from a services perspective. And we'll come back and look at a bit more about that in a while after we've seen the demo. So at this point, I'd urge any questions, if you have, just pop them into the system and we'll try and address those as we go along. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Steve to give you a quick demonstration of Hornbill Service Manager.
Perfect, thanks Abdi, and good morning everyone. So let's take a look at Service Manager from a number of different perspectives. So Abdi's introduced a couple of characters, Greg and Sonia, and we'll have a look at those through the web client. But we'll also have a look initially at our customers' experience, whether that be internal customers or external customers that you're supporting. So we'll start actually by having a look at the self-service options that are available to you. And we'll just comment here that we do support single sign-on for both your end users and your analysts. The portal, as Abdi mentioned, is available in multiple languages, and the portal is actually brandable and customizable codelessly through the admin tool. Just by way of an example here, we can just have a look at one of our customers that's branded that and put their background images and color schemes in through our admin tool. But I'll just come in here and log in as a customer, be that internal on this occasion, just to demonstrate the experience they will receive. So when Steve logs in as a customer here, what he's presented with is really the services or the offering that you provide as a business to him. Now internally here, Steve could be subscribed to one or multiple services that you provide, but this is equally applicable if you're talking about external customers that you're subscribing to the services that you offer. Steve will only ever see those services that he's subscribed to, whether that's subscribed individually, by his department or other groupings that you define. We can favoritise services to make them available at the top level, or if we go on to my all services, we can look at the services that Steve takes, perhaps not just from IT, but from other functions within the business. So here we're really talking about a single place for Steve to go to make requests, or service requests, or raise incidents against not only IT, but potentially facilities, HR, finance, whatever the different functions are that might be using the Service Manager solution. So on here we can see that Steve is subscribed to multiple services, things like his benefits that he's entitled to, services around mobiles. If he's a manager or a department head, maybe he's got particular options that are available to him here, as well as reporting issues with printers, etc. Now we can drill in and have a look at some of the options that sit underneath the services here. And if we have a look at home working, initially what we can see here are multiple tabs. We can see any existing requests that Steve's raised against that service. We can see any knowledge that we want to push out, so any FAQs that we've created, whether that contains embedded videos or hyperlinks off to external sources. We can see how many times these articles have been viewed and marked as useful. We can also see here whether, as an IT function, we already know about a particular issue, and we can publish out those known issues. We can mark services as being impacted. We can provide the information in customer-friendly language. We can push out workaround information, and we can also provide our customers with a very simple and easy way of associating themselves to that problem or known error by simply clicking on a Me Too button, which reduces down significantly repeat incidents that are being raised against issues that you're already aware of. And obviously as a customer, if I've made a mistake, I can unselect myself from there as well. But once we've got that sort of proactive information, so knowledge that we want to push out or issues that they're aware about, it sort of moves us on to actually, well, do I want to raise a new request if there's no knowledge or no information here? And that introduces our request catalogue. And this is really a way of you actually formalising the the services you offer again, whether it's in IT or finance or HR, and the options that your users have again in customer-friendly language about things they're able to do. So here we can see from our mobile service that this particular user has the rights to submit a request for help against a particular mobile device, or maybe they actually want to initiate a service request to request a new mobile. So if we just follow one of these examples through, we'll take an example here to request a new mobile. What we're presented with is a concept we call progressive capture, and this is really just a simple way of guiding the user through the questions they need to provide, the information we need in order to raise that request. What will sit behind this, as you'll be familiar with Supportworks, is the concept of business processes. So off the back of this, we can route and triage this to the correct team, we can attribute the correct priority and any workflow actions that need to occur. In this example, I'm just going to request that I want an iPhone 6. Maybe I've got a minimum spec that I need, maybe there's a minimum amount of roaming data on a monthly basis, and whether I want it to be 4G enabled. And then obviously perhaps quite key important reasons here are, why do I actually need this one? Here the old mobile is broken. Something creative like that. Obviously this all helps if our fulfillment process involves any authorizations, and we want to provide that information to the people that are making the decision, whether it be my manager or budget holders. So on doing so, that request is then raised. The end user gets immediate feedback to let them know that that ticket has been received, any fulfillment process has been invoked, and if we choose to, we can give them visibility of where that sits in the process, what stages there are and what checkpoints need to be achieved in order for this to be fulfilled and delivered to me. Obviously we can support all of this with email notifications at any key or trigger points that you're interested in. If we go back up and have a look at another service we've got here, which is desktop support, and we have a look at some existing tickets that we've raised, obviously we can look at our active or our closed ones. And if we go in and have a look at a ticket that Steve raised previously, we can see this one has actually been completed. It's moved the ticket into a resolved state, which gives Steve the ability to provide feedback on the level of service that he'd received, obviously the ability to update, but also for him to see the entire timeline, which is the audit trail or the equivalent of the call diary, for any of those customer-facing updates. What you'll notice here, though, is that all the updates are in line. I don't have to drill into to expand them. And we can see here that hyperlinks and video content can be shared directly if there's some useful content that we want to push out for Steve to review, images, etc., etc. So all of that is there. So that was really just a very, very quick introduction to the self-service options that are available to you. But now we've seen that, let's go back and have a look at perhaps Graham and his view of the world from an analyst perspective. So we'll just switch and we'll come in here and we'll log in as Graham. So while I'm just going through here, as I mentioned from self-service here, we do support single sign-on, and we can obviously hook that up to your Active Directory or equivalent. We use the industry standard SAML protocol to alleviate this. Obviously I'm just logging in locally. Now when I log in, I do get presented with my news feed and some of the collaborative features which Abdi referred to, and I'm going to come back and have a look at those with you in due course. A couple of the key things are, though, we can see here that I've received notifications about that service request that we've just logged on behalf of Steve, and some notifications about tasks, etc. So when I come in, I can pick up my notifications through the platform. We can also obviously get email notifications, or I can pick them up on both the native iOS and Android apps, and we'll be having a look at that mobile interface towards the end. But just before we sort of have a look at the tickets and the management of the side, it's probably quite important to have a look at actually what underpins Service Manager. So we've kind of introduced the concept of the services and request catalog via Steve, and we've got visibility of that. But this particular user, Graham, has got the rights to actually manage some of the services that we're promoting out there. And if we have a look down here, potentially at something like our Mac support service, it's in here when we can start to configure all of the options that underpin Service Manager. So this service, for example, is available to individuals, groups, departments, etc., depending on what we made available. It is supported by one or multiple teams, and this is important because that will restrict who we can assign the tickets across to individuals and teams when we're actually managing tickets. The status and the availability of the services. When we look at some of the customization on here, what we can actually do against this particular service, for any incidents that are raised against this service, we can define what email templates we want to use. We can define and customize the forms that we're going to use and the fields and the custom options that you want available, for instance, raised against that service that may differ to instance raised against another service, etc. So all of those options are available for you here. We can also decide the categories that we want to make visible. We can publish and define the catalogue items or the options that we want to make visible to our users, and we can underpin each of those with their own individual, if you like, e-forms or progressive capture way of capturing that information, and also the fulfillment processes we're going to use. We can make those available on the portal in one or multiple languages, and we can decide whether these are applicable to the analyst community when they're logging based on a phone call, or whether they're just specific to the portals and portal-only options that you want to push out. On top of that, though, we've also got the option to define that against any of the request types. We've got visibility of all of the requests that have been raised against that service. We can link assets that underpin that service, the relationships to that, and also then define the knowledge or information that we want to push out. So setting up those FAQs and having visibility about who's been looking at them, whether they were useful or not. All of that feedback is provided here. Okay. So we did look very briefly here at the request catalogue options that are on here and how they were underpinned by business processes and progressive capture, and we'll just quickly have a look at how those are put together. So we'll just come back to the admin tool, and again this is all web-based, so I'm just going to log in here to the admin tool. One of the key parts or key takeaways from here was trying to keep the administration as intuitive and as simple as possible. So what we've done here is we're actually working with a canvas-based environment. So I'm just drilling down into my service manager configuration, and I'm just going to have a look at my business processes here. So first and foremost, we do ship with out-of-the-box business processes, but what we've tried to do is move away from the form-based approach here and actually provide you with a canvas drag-and-drop environment to build your processes in. Now, Service Manager should not be prescriptive in any way. So examples of that would be that we're not going to dictate to you that you have to use service level timers, or if you are using service level timers that you need to use a fix and response timer, or in fact when they should start or what constitutes them being achieved. It's entirely up for you to come in and define and build your own processes, and that's very much about building the stages that you want to define in your process and all of the actions that occur within those stages. But as well as that, you can set up automatic routing. You can set that up based on a specific team or individual, or you can use round robin and availability in those calculations. You can set up human tasks, automated tasks, authorizations, decision points. You can check the answer to questions that have been submitted during the progressive capture in your decision logic. You can set up checkpoints to visualize what's been achieved so far in the stages and what needs to happen next. This is a very sort of simplistic instant process, but if we have look at something like our change process, we might have, again, multiple stages. We might have the concept of authorizations, and within those authorization, one or multiple approvers. We might include variables so we can pass through information about the ticket into that particular authorization so they can get an assessment of the risk, the impact, etc. We've also introduced the concept of expiry. So if you want to issue a task or an authorization and you want it to expire after a certain period of time if no decision has been made, that is all catered for, and that gives you the option to expire and use things like delegate authorizations if need be. The whole concept of parallel processing is catered for as well, so you can have your tasks running in tandem through here, and again it's really about building these to support the way that you want to work rather than having to sort of change your way of working to fit the tool. Okay. What we've also done then, as we kind of briefly looked at through the self-service portal, is introduce this concept of progressive capture. So what we've done here is try to move away from that sort of form-based approach where we've got one big instant logging form, if you will, with lots and lots of fields on, and try to move to a more progressive, one question at a time way of logging a ticket. Very much like your consumer life, where if you've ever booked a holiday online or you bought insurance online, they're very simple and intuitive. They just guide you through single question. Based on the answer, it will go to the next question, etc., etc. So in this example, we've introduced that exact kind of logic, and again, a graphical canvas environment in which to build it. All of these blue nodes are really just questions that you're going to ask and the order you're going to ask them in. And here we can see that based on an answer to that question, it might branch accordingly. So this example, if we log a ticket and we know who we're talking to and they're running a desktop support issue, we might ask them for the category, the priority, the asset it's related, which site they're at. However, if they're wanting to raise a new starter question, potentially we've got our own questions that we want to ask them and define here. So again, that's all built graphically for us. But with all that in mind, let's go back and have a look at how that actually looks and how that works now. So again, we've tied those progressive capture and business processes to the service we offer. When I come in as an analyst into Hornbill and into Service Manager, what I see and what I can do is entirely governed by my rights and my roles, and it's all context sensitive. There's no concept of things being greyed out if I don't have the rights to use them, so people won't be overly inquisitive about stuff they haven't got the rights to, they just won't see them. And that is absolutely true when we look at the request list. This request list is context sensitive. It respects the teams that I belong to. It respects the services that my teams support. So all of the data I'm looking at here will just be relevant to me. If we have a look at our options across the top here, I've got the rights to work with incidents and service requests and problems. If I didn't, these icons just wouldn't be visible. But it does allow me then to look at individual request types if I want to, or all of those different request types together. I can look at that in the context of tickets I'm managing personally, ones I'm following, which I'll come back to, ones I've been added to. I can look at this against all of the teams that I belong to, or any of the tickets logged against services my team support, or I may just want to have a look at actually show me all of the tickets that belong to the first line support team that I'm a member of, or if I switch that up again, show me any ticket type that belongs to any team that I'm a member of. We've complemented those fixed filters, if you like, with a couple of options, the first of which is a quick filter on the left-hand side here that allows me to say, right, in the context of the view I've got set up, show me everything that's VPN related, or show me everything that Brian is currently working on at the moment, and we can see that he's the owner of those particular tickets. Or I could use the same option here to show me everywhere where Anna is the customer. So a very powerful and quick way to actually drill and filter that list back to something that's important to me. But we have taken as feedback from our Supportworks customers when we were looking at actually empowering our analysts to have more flexibility and control over the environments in which they work. So important in Supportworks, if we take for example here, if you wanted to create a new view, or you wanted to add a new filter to a view in Supportworks, you'd have to contact the administrator, and we'd have to expect the administrator to understand that they need to go into admin and they need to go to edit the data dictionary, and they need to understand how the open call table works and which columns to include and such like. Well, we've tried to take all of that complexity away by actually giving each analyst the ability to say, well, actually, I want to create the views that are important to me, and I just want to do that in a very simple and intuitive way without the need for any of that admin overhead or having to go off and ask for anyone's assistance. So here I've just created a number of different examples, and if I drill into the configuration here, you'll see it's a very simplistic clause builder that allows me to create these personal views. And if I go in and want to add some parameters to that, it's all user-friendly. There's no references to the back-end database structure at all. I could just come in here and say, I'm looking at all the high-priority incidents that are open. Potentially I just want to do that against one of the services, so I can come in here and maybe I'll just choose to show me the high priority instance against the desktop support service for open. So very easy and intuitive to do that. What we've also done off the back of here though is allow and provide each analyst with their own actual personal dashboard and the ability to create the content that goes on their own personal dashboards. So using these views, I'm setting up the parameters for each of those particular charts or information that I want to use. But what I'm then doing is creating the individual charts that I want to use off the back of those conditions. So if we think here, for example, I've got my high priority instance that I'm interested in, but I might want to have a look at a chart which show me which teams those high priority incidents belong to, or which individuals are responsible for those high priority incidents. Or if I wanted to create another one, potentially who's impacted by those high priority incidents. So I can just come in here, make my selections and say, right, well, I want to look at my customers. I'm going to preview that. Now I can see against my high priority instance, these are the users that are impacted. Now, if I save those particular views and make them visible, I then have the option from my request list to toggle between my traditional list view, but also my own personal dashboard. So out of the box here, we can see the queries that I've defined, and each of these queries that I've set up, I can move around. It is my dashboard. I can make them longer, smaller, shorter if I want to. It's entirely up to me. As I mentioned here, all of these will support drill down out of the box. So I can immediately get back to that request list and that segment that's important to me to look at those tickets that are relevant. And if I want to, from that point, I can export those out, choosing the information that I want to take out to CSV with me. Okay. Other options you've got as an individual here as well are customizing which columns you want to view, the order they're appearing in, which columns you're prepared to sacrifice if you're working on a smaller screen. All of those options are available to you. Okay. At this point, we're really sort of looking at what's the analyst's experience of raising a request? We've looked at Steve's experience via the portals, but how do we go about raising a request and using those progressive captures? So there's probably just a couple of things to highlight here. First and foremost is that there are various ways to raise tickets in Service Manager. Self-service is one, we've looked at that. The second one is we're going to look at raising them manually now. The third option is the idea of having the shared mailboxes embedded into the platform in a very familiar way that you're used to in Supportworks. So again, one or multiple shared mailboxes with rights to which ones you can see, with the concepts of the equivalent of the autoresponder allowing the automatic logging of tickets as well as the manual triage that we're looking here. And we also have the ability to raise tickets from third-party applications. The one thing that's slightly different from Supportworks here is that because Service Manager is entirely cloud and web-based, 100% of what we're looking at today here is available through our APIs. So you can use those APIs from third-party tools to raise requests. And we also have a concept called webhooks that allows you, off the back of an event in Service Manager, to push information out to a secure URL endpoint where you might want to pick that up via a third-party tool as well. So all of those options are available. But if we come back to where we were on the request list and we have our look at options at the top here, we do have the ability to dive in and go, right, I want to raise a new instance or a service request. But some of the feedback that we had from Supportworks was actually about the misdiagnosis or the mislogging or the wrong logging of the ticket type when raising a request. Because typically in Supportworks you have to either go to the instant logging form, the service request logging form, then take the information from the caller, and by which point you may have ascertained that actually it should have been an instant when you had the service request form open or vice versa. So what we've actually done here is introduce a concept of actually just gathering the information first using progressive capture before you make the assessment as to what sort of ticket it is. So on here I'm just going to use myself as the customer. So using progressive capture, that was just the first form I've defined to use. You can set this up however you like. But what we've got here is on the right hand side validation of that it's the right person and their contact information. Also access to their active requests, because we don't know necessarily at this point if they're looking to raise a new ticket or looking for an update on an existing one. So if it's an update on an existing one, great, we can give them that information. On this occasion it's not going to be, and we're going to move on to the next stage. So again, we're just collapsing down and answering questions if we need them. What we now see here are the services that Steve is subscribed to. We've got visibility to the request catalog items that are available to log via the analyst view. So here Steve could be calling in reporting a slow performance issue, an issue after an OS upgrade. Great, let's choose that option. That's going to pick the right BPM, it's going to route it to the right team. It could even prioritize it, it could even set the correct category, reduce the work that the analysts actually need to do. But just for argument's sake today, let's just follow the generic desktop support route down here, and based on the questions that were linked to that, we're now going to go ahead and add some information in. So let's just put VPN issue, unable to connect, and move forward. Now potentially at this point we know who we're speaking to, we know that it's actually a break fix issue against this service. We may well know enough at this point to raise it as an incident. But just for argument's sake, if I went down the change route, I'm going to see here that I've just got an option to upload a document or supporting documents for this particular request. But if I follow the instant route based on that progressive capture, it's now going to ask me the relevant questions that relate to that. So on here I'm going to categorize it manually, I'm going to set the priority manually. Bearing in mind what I said here, which is if we use the request catalog, we can take some of this work away and actually predefine that in your business processes. Off the back of that, we might also want to associate one or multiple assets that the user is calling about. So it could be his laptop, it could be any other assets. We can do an asset tag search for any of those, and we can obviously associate multiple. And maybe it's important as well to associate where the user is calling from. Are they normally based at one site? Do they work from home? Do they roam around? Obviously, we can use their usual site, or we can pick up on any other sites that you've defined within your organisation. Let's just say maybe Steve was working abroad today, but he's not, so he's working from the Leeds office. We're going to go ahead and raise this. What you notice though is we're just going through and capturing the information in the order and the consistent way that you want. And the key benefit really here is that you should be able to put anybody in front of this and get them to be able to raise tickets without any real knowledge of any of those underlying processes. What we'll notice here once that ticket is logged is that we can prefix the tickets with whatever we want. On here I've got IN, it could be SR for service request, it could be an abbreviation of your company name, it could involve today's date and how many tickets have been raised today. You can set those auto values up as you need them. Once that ticket is logged and we look at this ticket from an analyst point of view, we see the heads up display at the top, which is a graphical representation of that process. So we look at the stages that you've defined in the business process, and we can also see the checkpoints that you've marked, and we can see which ones have automatically been achieved, which is an email's been automatically sent, it's automatically routed it to the first line team based on the service or the item that was selected. We know the priority was set because we saw ourselves do that during the progressive capture, and as a result of that, in this particular example, it's kicked off my fixed timer on this issue. But what it's also done here is say, actually, within the context of the first line team, no one in that team has actually taken ownership yet. So what it's done here is taken me in context on my action bar to where that action needs to be performed. So I can now come in here, pick up this ticket as the analyst in that team, and on doing so, that checkpoint becomes achieved and marked. We move on to the next stage, and in this example, it's actually created a task for an individual, maybe the named owner, maybe a role, or a group to actually go ahead and do something towards the resolution of this ticket. And we'll come back to that in a second because that's quite important. But there's also a lot of manual actions that are available to you across the action bar here. And again, this is another example of customization options that are here. Using the services form down here, I can actually customize what action options are available depending on the ticket type and the service it's raised against. So if I don't want my users linking tickets to other tickets for this particular service, they don't have to, the option won't be there. Or if I don't want them adding assets, all of those options can be taken away. But just to work through some of the very quick examples on here, I can put updates in, I can make them customer or team facing, I can do that. I can cut and paste and put images in here, so if I take a screenshot of what we're looking at here, I can simply put that in there, so that may be the error, so we'll update that. All of those updates, as I mentioned, then just appear in the timeline. The timeline, if you like, is the equivalent of your call diaries that you'll be familiar with. As you can see here, it's very quick and easy just to scroll down and find the items you're interested in, or just look for all of the relevant updates that you want to see. Now we can also create custom buttons that go off and search content in Google or YouTube or internal resources. And as we've seen from the self-service portal, if we've got a video that we've shared, users can view that via the self-service portal. That's a very important way of working. We can schedule callbacks, we can drag and drop attachments, we'll go searching for them, all those options are available. We can look for and relate our tickets to one another. So in this example, I might want to look for any other VPN related tickets. Go ahead then, I can see that there's actually 32 results. Maybe that's too many for me to sort of look through, so I might just want to filter that down to say, just show me any problems that are still currently open that are against VPN. And we can see here that it's restricting my results down. Now, on here I can see there's a problem. I could look at that problem, look at the workaround, see if it's relevant. But what you'll notice when I actually link this problem is it's going to do two things. One, it's going to push out any possible solutions to the action bar, and it's also going to open up a new expand or collapse section showing me linked requests. So as we see here, I've now got a linked request section, and I've now got a possible solution to my issue. I can review that workaround information and choose to accept or reject that as the solution to my particular incident. What you'll also recall from the self-service portal is that we can push out problems and known errors in the form of known issues to the portal, and we can do that through the problem records. Okay. Other options you've got available to you are emailing out using the email templates. We can use snippets on here, so we might use call and left message here. So again, this is just a concept that you'll be familiar with, so just reintroducing those passing through variables from the ticket into the context. We also have the ability to associate more than one customer to a ticket and define what their interest in the ticket is. So are they impacted by this? Are they interested? Was it logged on behalf of somebody else? And once we've got those customers added, if we're emailing out, we can include those connections either manually in those communications, or we can automatically include them from the business process tool. All of those options are available to us. We can add assets, we can add them to boards, and I'll come back to them in a second, but there's a lot of key things that you can do on here. But really sort of touching on the collaborative side of it, there's two concepts I want to introduce here. The first of which is actually the ability to bring in subject matter experts into the team in a slightly more informal way. Absolutely, we support the ability to assign tickets between teams that have the rights to have tickets assigned to them. Or two, we can create activities for individuals' roles, etc. But we also have the ability here to actually invite in subject matter experts and add them into the tickets. The reason for doing that may be that Rosemary might not normally look at my team's queue, or she might not normally have the rights to look at incidents. By adding her here, we can elevate her rights. Now in doing so, what we might also want to do is mention Rosemary. So we can push out a targeted communication asking or informing Rosemary of what we'd like her assistant to be here. Can you take a look, please? Now on doing so, Rosemary is going to get notified about that, again through her platform notifications or through her mobile notifications that she can pick up on the fly. Now again, it's really an overview today, so I'm just going to move on from here and have a look at maybe raising a linked change from this particular request. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to promote up the information from here. I'm going to maybe potentially raise this against a particular service. Maybe I've got some custom questions that I want to ask, so what type of changes that I want to submit, who's impacted by this, what's the risk, do I want to categorize it, do I want to associate more assets, all of those options are available to you. But once we've got that change raised, and again we've got the prefixes for this, we'll go ahead and we'll have a look at the ticket format. So the key things here are it's very familiar, very easy to use. The heads-up display again will represent the fulfillment process for this particular change request. And again in here there's certain actions that I'm going to be driven to from the business process. So this example, again, I've taken ownership. It's now created a task for someone to actually validate that from the change team. So just because someone's raised it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to accept it into the change, but I can look at that and say, yeah, it looks valid. I've spent so much time reviewing that. All of the outcomes for the tasks that you're creating are obviously entirely definable by yourselves. In this case, it's moved my process on. We've come down to an impact assessment. I'm going to go in there and say, actually, well, so many users affected. Again, I'll spend a bit of time on it. I know if I go high or medium, it's going to require a backout plan. I'll select low on this occasion, really just to demonstrate that this has now moved us down to a change approval stage. And at this point, I want to introduce another concept that's new to Service Manager, and that's the concept of visual boards. And this really gives you the ability as a change manager or somebody that's overseeing like your procurement process or looking after problem management. It's giving you a different view from the traditional request view. It's giving you a bird's eye view, a real-time view of all of the changes in this example that are currently in flight against your change process. And all of those that, excuse me, are at their different life cycle stages. Now, using the business process, we can automatically move those tickets to the relevant stage. So we can see here that the change that we've just raised here, 237, has automatically made its way across to the with cab queue without me having to manually bring it across. Now, these are Kanban style boards, so I can drag and drop if I want to, but as I say, it gives you that real-time view of what's happening. Now, if we come back to 237 that we were working on here and this authorization, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to accept that, make that decision. That then moves me on to somewhere to schedule it if I wanted to in my process. But also, if we come back up to where we started on here, and I talked about a news feed very briefly, this news feed is really about a central place for information to be pushed to Graham for things that he's interested in. So we can see here that by authorizing that change, we've automatically pushed out a notification to our change management team that this particular change has been authorized. Now, I'm receiving that notification because I'm a member of this change management workspace on the left-hand side here. But I'm also seeing other things like updates to incidents that I'm following, or documents that I'm interested in or have been shared with me, or problems that have been reported and that are ongoing. All of the things that are important to me will get pushed up to my newsfeed. Now, a couple of the reasons, why do I see instance updates? Well, I've simply chosen to follow or unfollow, similar to the watch call concept that you have, be familiar with in Supportworks. Why do I get notifications from change management or problem management? Again, it's because I'm a member of that particular workspace. That affords me a facility to collaborate with my colleagues on that subject matter. It affords an area for us to automatically publish information down to you. But it also allows you to work together to actually build, I suppose, what we would call tacit knowledge, informal knowledge that you actually potentially lose using sort of traditional systems. Discussions that go on via email or might be discussed by the coffee machine that never actually get written down, and then that expert leaves the business or he repetitively gets asked the same question. So on here you can actually use workspaces to say, well, actually, let's bring together our first line analysts, our second line, our third line team. Let's give them a facility where they can ask those questions. Anyone else that's a member of those workspaces then can come in and provide answers to those questions. And here we can see Pablo and Pierre in their local language providing the answers, and Graham using the translate option, seeing those answers in his local language. And that's great because we can see some answers, but we can also allow our other colleagues to validate whether those answers are good. Is it solid knowledge? Are we happy to reuse that? Can we push that back to Graham's customer? So just by doing what you would naturally do in email or discussion, actually having that in the tool, we're actually starting to build up that knowledge repository so that if I wanted to, using the global search bar at the top, look for anything that might be relating to our VPN software going forward, I can just search all of that content and I can narrow the search down to say, well, actually, I'm only interested in what Bob had to say because he's our VPN expert. Or I'm only interested in anything that was posted in the last 6 months because we've had some upgrades to that application. Or I just want to see anything that's TrueSoft related in the context of a particular workspace. And here we can see another match, we can see another question, another answer that was provided, and also 3 potential answers, or sorry, for some validation against that potential answer. It's a really, really powerful way of working with that natural knowledge. And that's not forgetting for a second that we also need a facility for structured knowledge. So on the platform you have Document Manager that allows you to upload or create documents. It allows you to share those documents before you publish them, work on the revisions of those documents, keep revision histories for those documents, attribute tags that will help with assisting, issue review dates, mark those as active when they're ready to go, publish those out into particular libraries to make those more accessible. All of those options are available to you. Just looking at the time, there's a couple of other areas I just want to touch on. One is the ability to manage the assets that you use or the users use. So we've seen through progressive capture, we know who owns what assets, we know which assets underpin which services. In here we have various ways to upload those assets. You can do that via a CSV import, or we have a local scheduled facility that can look at things like SCCM or any local MySQL or MS SQL database and schedule that information to be published and pushed up to your instance on whatever basis you need it to be done. Okay. And the last 2 things I want to introduce just before I hand it back to Abdi is looking at our analytics and also the mobile client. So if we just come back to the admin side for a second, and if we bear in mind when we look at reporting, we're looking at really 2 levels. We're looking at our front-end analyst community with your views and your charts and your personal dashboards, giving you a very simple and intuitive way to do that. And then we can move on and look at our advanced analytics options. And this is really about having or introducing the concepts of the trending engine, allowing you to build measures, allowing you to set measures, things like how many tickets you're resolving on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What's your average resolution time? Setting targets for those measures and seeing how you're performing for those measures on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What's the trend like against each of those measures? But then taking those measures and consuming them into widgets, making them publishable onto your dashboards, creating multiple dashboards, sharing those dashboards with the relevant users, or if you're wanting to, combining multiple dashboards into slideshows so that you can actually publish out lots of content transitioning through in a few seconds. This is probably a quick way just to give you a feel for the type of output that you can expect to get using Service Manager. So here we've got traditional charts, we've got targets, we've got more sort of banner style metrics, and again these will the individual widgets will refresh in whatever intervals you've set them up. So we also, just to complement that as well, you have access to your traditional reports that allow you to get your list reports and such like out. Okay. But just to finish up before I pass you back to Abdi, I'm just going to take a very quick look at the mobile option that's available to you. So we'll just bring that up in 2 seconds. Okay, so now we've got the mobile up here, we can see that on my Apple device here that Service Manager is a native app, and again it's also available on your Android devices. So on here we see that we've got access to all that newsfeed information that we saw through the web clients. We've got access to your activities, so anything you need to complete is available to you on your mobile. You've got access to search and see your co-workers' information and external contacts you're working with, who's nearby. You can create drafts on here. You've got access to the workspaces you're a member of. You've got access to all of that documentation, all that content that we saw through the Document Manager app is available on here as well, as is access to your requests. Your requests list that you've got available to you, you can filter and work accordingly. So on here I've got the same quick filter that I had on my request list. I can come in and create my own views that I need, so restrict that list back to just my incidents and just tickets that belong to a particular team. So on here we could have a look at our first line requests, and I could either set that as a home view, that will always be my default, or I can simply apply it as a random view. I can then go into the requests, I can look at all of the information, I can reassign, I can resolve, I can view the timeline information that we've got, and also what we've got available to us here is the ability to add new posts or comments to existing posts. We've got the ability to use the mobile phone's technology, so we can take pictures and we can upload those pictures automatically from here. So if I'm an engineer out and about It's a great way for me to be able to share pictures of the issue that are going on. Or if I wanted to, on here we can also come in and provide comments, and we can use options like the dictaphone. This is a comment. And we can just send those through. So again, making most practical use of the mobile application, ease of use when you're out there. The same can be used when you're completing tasks and such like, and quick filter. Anywhere there's a text box, you can use that facility. So at this point, I'm just going to hand back to Abdi, and I hope that overview was useful.
Brilliant, thanks Steve. Whistle stop tour, lots to see. So if we can just get the slides back up, we'll quickly wrap up here. I'm conscious that we've got about 5 minutes, but if you bear with us, we'll run through the last bit of the presentation and jump onto the questions to wrap up. So having seen the solution in action, let's just recap and have a look at how Hornbill makes Graham's life easier. And again, remember Graham's the analyst type persona in terms of engagement. So I'm sure you'll all agree, great demo from Steve, but what we've shown you there today is definitely a modern, powerful, intuitive ITSM tool. There's no disputing that, I'm sure. Makes it much easier for you to connect with your experts through the mentions and the members and the collaborative technology that we've showed you there. I'm sure you'd agree it's a very good way of being able to keep your team connected, but also in connecting those people together and capturing those conversations, we're then able to reuse that tacit knowledge and capture that for benefit in the future. Obviously, it makes it much easier to connect people across different geographies if you're working in different geographies, and also get around the language, so you can get into working more effectively. And again, through the continuous deployment, again, we didn't really show you that today, but in essence what we're saying there is that Graham doesn't have to stop what he's doing to upgrade the system. The system is always up to date, and he can spend a lot more time actually just on working to resolve customer issues. And I'm sure you see from what we showed you today, very much easier to configure your processes and to manage the system in general terms anyway. So how does Hornbill make Sonia's life easier? Let's just look at this. So again, we can see that Sonia can be reassured in the fact that using Service Manager means that that people can much more readily connect with knowledge and expertise, be better informed, drive faster decision making and better action, if you like. She can pull together the best team regardless of where they sit and what language they speak. She can be sure in the fact that everyone's following the process, because the system helps to orchestrate that, in that you've got your business process driving things in the background, and you've got your progressive capture making sure that the right information is captured at the right time when you log in the call, whether you're the analyst or the end user coming in through the portal, and so that's always correctly captured as required. And last but not least here, closing out on the dashboard side of things, we can see that through being able to present better information, that's going to inform your decision-making process going forward. So some really good and clear, concise benefits, I'm sure you'll all agree. So again, I guess onto the sort of wrap-up stage here of our presentation. Typically at this point people want to know, what does this thing cost? So it always sounds better in Italian, so we've got it up there in Italian for you. But in real terms, Service Manager is designed for small teams and large alike, so it's very scalable, and we offer very simple per user per month subscription cost. It is a named subscription, so one of the conversations we would probably need to have with you if you are a Supportworks customer using concurrent licenses is some kind of conversion calculation to work out how many named subscriptions you require, but that's something that we can take you through with your RM. In terms of the costs, it's a simple £42.50 per user per month, and that's all you need to pay for the analysts to come in and use the solution, and that obviously scales with volume, and over time that gets cheaper with every single user that you add. So it's very cost effective as you add more users over time. Now, one of the key things that's probably worth mentioning is that this curve here is basically what we call a price plan, and the relevance of that is basically brought forward in the next slide, in that one of the things that we offer as part of our Service Manager offering is a price for life guarantee that's written into our contracts. And in essence what that means is the price plan that you sign up to at the point where you subscribe is fixed for the life of your Hornbill contract. And so that means that over time, if we do decide to push the price of the subscriptions up, you as a customer are guaranteed not to be affected by that, in that your price plan was locked at the point you signed up. So what that gives you is certainty that you know what you're paying with Service Manager going forward. You know that you're always going to have that guaranteed price plan, and so you're not going to expect any nasty surprises at the end of the year or at the end of your contract when you decide that you're going to renew and the price goes up, which is typically the case with most SaaS vendors in the market today. So that's a really key, important point. The other thing just to note on that is that we don't technically have you locked in any way, so we have another term within our contract, which basically means you are entirely free to break that contract at any point. Terminate for convenience is the terminology, which means that that forces us to behave in certain ways, which means that we have to make sure that you're a happy customer. And one of the mantras that we're working on at the moment is the idea that we'd rather have happy customers than contractually tied customers. So again, that's all built into our contracts, as is a policy whereby we'll make sure that you always have somebody trained on how to use Service Manager. So we talked earlier on about one of the challenges being the fact that your expert leaves, gets promoted, whatever it may be, and you're left with a solution like Supportworks where a certain level of knowledge is required to maintain that. We offer what we call a train for life guarantee, which means that all you need to do as an organisation is notify us that your expert has moved on, promoted, whatever the situation is, and we'll take on the burden of making sure that the next person that you nominate is fully trained up to administer your system going forwards. Okay. So aside from that, what happens next? Well, if you like what you've seen today, what we offer you is the opportunity for you to put us to the test, and that's not just us as in the Hornbill, but also the products, obviously. And the format of that would be that we would actually happily give you the access to the solution. So we will give you the solution free over a 30-day period. We would spin up an instance that's specific to you. We will allocate a product specialist who would help you to implement the solution for free. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that involves in a moment. And the only obligation that we put on you is that at the end of that 30-day period is that you make an assessment as to whether the tool is something you want to accept or whether it's something you want to reject. And assuming you decide to accept at that point, then you can start to pay for subscriptions. If not, we just walk away and we will have done all of that implementation at no cost, and no bill comes your way effectively. So I mentioned earlier on that concept of free implementation. This is all wrapped up into this what we call a 30-day trial period, where we'll effectively go into that as if you're a paying live customer. We'll get this thing implemented for you, get your data in there, and give you an opportunity to actually see this work before you make that final if you like, financial commitment to progress with Hornbill Service Manager. So what can you expect in that 30 days? Well, in simple terms, as I said earlier on, we'll assign one of our product specialists to your account. They will work with you closely over that 30 days to transfer knowledge and to undertake that implementation or that migration across from Supportworks. And that will include very basic level integrations with things like your email, integration with the Active Directory to include the SAML integration that Steve mentioned earlier on for single sign-on, allowing and helping you to bring in imports of your users from AD or other sources if you need to bring those in, helping with static data such as asset data, bringing that into the system, configuring any aspects of the applications that you've chosen to deploy. So if you choose to deploy the document manager application that Steve showed you there around knowledge, we would help you to understand how to do that. So again, full knowledge transfer around all of those sorts of things. Help with customization, advising what can be possible and what's not possible, and just really working with you to deliver your requirements across into the system, which also would include helping you to set up and train you on how to use the business workflows and in the system. So the net of that is that you end up with a system that's up and running with your data in there that you can then make a real value judgment call as to whether that's something you want to proceed with. And then in those 30 days, you can either subscribe or not. And that's as simple as it is. So, for more information on that, certainly be worthwhile having a chat with your relationship manager. Steve and I are also available if you want to have a more detailed look at the tool. We'd be happy to organise a more detailed dive into any aspects of the solution. But again, first starting point would probably be to start with your relationship manager in order to understand what the next steps entail. So with that said, let's jump in and have a look at some of the questions. I know there's been several questions that have been posted, so let's have a look at those quickly if we can. I know there's one here specifically around the fact that one of you has stated that you're in the financial services sector and data and cloud solutions pose potential questions. So, first and foremost, Hornbill's cloud offering is ISO 27001 certified. You elect your hosting location, so if you're a UK or European-based organisation who wants your data to stay within the EU, then our data centres are in the UK. Your data stays in the EU based on a subscription in this geography. If you were to sign up in the US, then obviously you can choose the US as your hosting location. Steve, you can see the questions perhaps a bit clearer than I can.
Sure, yeah, there's a couple of, so one of the questions regarding using, do I have to use progressive capture for the instant logging process? You don't. It's entirely optional whether you invoke that progressive capture for any of the processes. We obviously advocate its benefits. We think it's consistent way of logging that information, but if you choose not to do it, simply by clicking on the instant option, it will take you into the instant form.
The thing I'd add to that as well is if you've got a request catalog set up, then in fact those become sort of templated calls, so you can actually log a call with just a click without having to capture anything more than who's the affected customer in most cases. So again, there's lots of options available to you there.
Okay, we've got a question here regarding the data import that they use with Supportworks, with tools like Active Directory, SQL-based tools, etc., etc. So yeah, so maybe one for me. We do have obviously with this being a cloud-based solution, it's not, our import tool isn't tied to the server as it is with Supportworks, which you'll be familiar with. There's a local executable that runs that you can point at your local MS SQL or MySQL databases. You can do the data manipulation. You can put your queries into that tool. You can then schedule that tool to push the information or that data into your instance or whatever tool you want. So it will be different, but the end result should be the same, but it certainly won't take you back to a manual requirement. Obviously, we do have CSV for non-scheduled imports.
And that's available for both assets and user imports from AD.
That's correct, yeah, absolutely. What else have we got here?
So there's a question here about ITSM and FM. I think one of you may be using Supportworks across a couple of disciplines. Again, that's also supported within Hornbill Service Manager. As Steve started out on the portal, that's probably as good a place as anywhere to point out the benefits there. So again, your view of the world as an end user is based on subscriptions to services. If you push out a service that relates to facilities or HR or IT, again, your users are based on the portal can come in and consume and log calls against those services. They're then routed accordingly to the relevant teams, and that is possible. We don't specifically have an FM module, which we potentially had in Supportworks, but again, you can log calls against a facilities service, if you like, and route that to the relevant team or teams that support that service, and underpin that with support for generic asset types and things like that as well.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here at the bottom asking about the migration and whether the specialist comes on site, whether they work remotely.
Yeah, sure. So just to cover off on that, so one of the things with the migration package is that obviously it doesn't cost you anything, and in the interest of being efficient and everything being a cloud-based service, we do all that work remotely. There are wraparound packages if you want to take them, which include the ability for somebody to come on site, both pre and post the switch on, but again, those would not be part of that free migration package. So if you wanted some pre-migration consulting, we can certainly facilitate that, but in essence, these are very discrete packages, if you like, in terms of the switch on and the migration that happens within the 30 days. It's fairly tied down in terms of the fact that it's always delivered remotely. I
think as well, just to add to that is, and speaking to your RM, they can point you to our wiki where what we call the switch on is documented. It's very, very clear what's in scope and what's out of scope there, so you've got a very clear picture of what would be delivered during that process. It is a tried and tested process. Just recently, one of our customers has gone through that process and recently won the SDI award for best small team using Service Manager, having transitioned from Supportworks 12 to 18 months ago, which is...
I think there's actually some case study information about that on our homepage. So the customer is Aylesbury Vale District Council, and so feel free to have a look on our homepage on the website for more info on that, or speak to your RM. They'll be happy to direct you in the right place.
Okay. Another question here was about obviously emails and how our customer uses Exchange and your own domain. Nothing changes. In essence, if you've got that hooked up to Supportworks, At the moment, we're effectively going to be doing the same thing. Obviously, it may feel slightly different because this is a cloud-hosted solution, but it's all the, if you like, the integrations and secure mail protocols are supported. And again, that would be one of the key things we would set up for you during that switch on. But yeah, you certainly wouldn't have to use a Hornbill domain if you sign up to use our service, not at all. There was another question about any, if is everything included in the package or are there any additional?
Sure. So yeah, in terms of what we showed you today, the solution is effectively all in. So everything we showed you there in terms of incidents, problems, changes is all included. The only module that we've actually showed you today that potentially you may want to take on top of the standard Service Manager subscription is the Performance Analytics package. And again, we can certainly give you some indication of the cost for that. That starts at £200 per month for the instance, so it's a one-off cost per instance, and that obviously allows anyone that you give the rights to use that tool to then come in and use that. So again, more info available through your RM on that.
Okay. Now, look, unfortunately, we can't drag on forever. We have got 2 or 3 other questions. I'm just going to touch on one and maybe reference another. So there was a question relating to the workflows and whether they could define risk impact scorings based on assets and SLAs. Not directly. What you can do using the workflow tool, though, at decision points is query request information. So if I wanted to assess the priority of the call, or who the customer was, the site, etc., or if I wanted to query a custom field against your customer record or a custom field against the organisation record, or a custom question you've asked during progressive capture, which might hold your risk and impact information, or that's held in custom fields into the request. All of that you can use in the workflow as decision questions, and you can use multiples of that to influence the behaviour of the workflow supporting the request. And I know, I'm just looking right at the top here, there was a question about creating reports and how that's done, and how you obviously like to have seen that in the request. What I would suggest is, if you speak to your RM, we can possibly organise a separate session and we can go through reports.
The other thing on the report side of things, and again, a lot of the features that we showed you today also blogged on our Feature Friday blog on our website. So if you navigate to the Hornbill website and do a search for Feature Friday, there's a plethora of videos there that relate to many of the features that we've covered here today. Yeah. So in wrapping up, I think that's probably most of the questions. I'm sure there'll be more. Feel free to contact your RM or email us at hello@hornbill. But I would really advocate going back through your RM. They're there to deal with this, and they'll be there to hound Steve and I to get you the answer as well. So go back through your RMs where possible. We're more than happy to sign you up for the 30-day trial and undertake to do that switch on for you. But we certainly accept that there's probably a few questions that you want answering before you jump into that. So make those questions known to us, and we'll get back to you. There's lots of resources available to you, and again, all of our documentation is up on our Hornbill wiki, and that's all easily searched through just using standard tools like Google or Bing. You can just search and you'll find information. So if you're interested in our email protocols, for example, or anything like that, just type it into Google and you should get some documentation back from there. So without much ado, I believe we've recorded this, so we'll be sharing the link to this recording. And hand back to Ruth, and thanks for your time this morning, everyone.
Thank you, Abdi and Steve, for taking us through that presentation. I hope you all found it very useful. As Abdi said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or your relationship manager. A copy of the recording will be available on our YouTube channel shortly, and an email with the recording will also be sent out to you. Finally, thank you everyone for your time today. Have a good day. Goodbye.